Hi, everyone. I would like to start off with what I'm wearing today, actually. So this pair of jeans, you can't buy it yet, not in a store. Our team actually designed and produced that. And in the next 10 minutes, I want to walk you through exactly how we got there. Because the how is actually a much bigger story, one that relates to a problem that every single brand faces. If you've worked in fashion, you probably know this already. But if you haven't, this part might surprise you. So a pair of jeans that's on a shelf is actually at the end of a relay race. It's the collaboration between a ton of people. So you start off with designers doing concept development, sketching, and that gets passed to merchandising team, figuring out the assortment plan, and then the sourcing team would jump in and help find a fabric mill. They would find the fabric, and the cut and sew factory would make the garment. And all of this is to make physical prototype and physical samples, just so everybody could actually visualize it and get on the same page of what we're trying to make. And these physical samples travel back and forth across oceans for months. So normally, you do all of this work before you actually even sell or market anything to the customer. And the kicker is that normally all of these decisions get made 12 months before the pair of jeans even get to a customer. So imagine essentially you're making a bet on what someone you've never met might want to wear next year. And in fashion industry, the hardest problem has never been about the lack of creativity. I believe it's actually making a bet and hoping it hits. Why do I say that's the biggest problem? It's because, well, this bet that we make at brands, it's so big, it's so early, and oftentimes the entire industry, we have learned how to protect ourselves from it. So more often than not, you see, we always copy what's working out there. We chase the same trends. We order huge quantity during production to try to lower the cost. It might sound like it's rational, but these result in pretty similar looking product. And as consumer, as a girl who loves fashion myself, I want newness, I want creativity, I want interesting products out there. And for a brand, the real cost is really missing the mark because, and often so, you don't get every single bet correct. And what happens is, usually in production, a brand would order for a single product, usually thousands, if not 10,000 units for a single product. So you imagine that's where you start. And you put it out there on the shelf to sell. Well, if it didn't sell quite as well as you hope, then normally they would offer discount, you would mark down the price. You try it, if it still doesn't sell quite as well, you mark it down again. And if that still doesn't work, then at the end, some of it is what ends up in the landfill. And so we kept asking ourselves at our company, what if you didn't have to make that giant bet at all? And that brings me back to this pair of jeans. Let me officially introduce myself. My name is Emily. We built an AI product development platform called Make the Dot. And what happens is we wanted to put our own platform to test. So we actually designed and produced an entire denim collection from scratch. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And we started off first with the research. We didn't just want to go off our hunches. So we looked at a couple of different places. We started off at Runway, and we saw some interesting designs out there. And then we wanted to track, well, how did these designs from Runway trickle down to brands? What are brands doing out there? We started noticing some patterns, just as the earlier panel mentioned about aggregating this trend insight and trend data. We also started looking at what celebrities and influencers were wearing on Instagram, on TikTok, and more importantly, we wanted to understand what people were searching in real time. So we aggregated all of that info, and by the very end of it, we had some pretty real grounded signals. what I like to call hypotheses. These were hypotheses that we wanted to test out. And that brings us to the next step, which is the design. We have an agent called Dot. So initially, we asked Dot to help us generate and take these insights, take these signals, and generate a bunch of variations to get us started. We noticed some really interesting details, design details like twisted seam detail, utilitarian vibe off of all these signals we were collecting. And then the next part came the curation, because now we were working with a ton of variations. This part, this was done by our design expert, Nicole. So she was actually a super user of Make the Dot. Even though the AI agent can help do grunt work like maybe generating flat cats, crunching data to show you insights, at the end of the day, taste always matters the most. Taste and expertise, that will never change. So that's where Nicole came in. She started curating and refining the entire collection, and she was making small tweaks on all these design. She was playing around with all the available materials, fabric, zipper, button on Make the Dot. And she was able to also take the style and dress it on body just to see how the construction would fit on body before any physical sample was even made. So that really saved quite a few like fit rounds back and forth. And from that point onwards, because she was working with so many different ideas, she also asked the Dot agent to create a line sheet to help her centralize everything so she could easily visualize the whole line. And what comes next was, after the curation, she started asking the agent to give her a draft of the initial tech packs. So then later on, when we do want to go into production, all of these details were ready. And what's really special about Make the Dot is that when you're creating these designs, they're not images. These are linked to real materials from a real supplier, which means every single AI generation on Make the Dot is manufacturable. And in terms of the next part, this is one of my favorite parts. Earlier, we mentioned that AI hallucinates a lot. It's important to get the details right. And this is where we really specialize in. So what's happening right now is Nicole then took some of the styles that she was curating. She wanted to make very, very special tweaks to it, down to the detail, down to stitching, down to whiskers, distress, the PP spray on the denim. Basically, all the little tiny details that make denim look like denim. And she was able to make all these little tiny tweaks directly on the platform. And the idea here is, because she wasn't spending time creating flat cats, let's say, on a good day. Normally, in Illustrator, you could create maybe 3 to 5 sketches a day. Now she gets to explore a ton more ideas in a matter of minutes and hours. And so the creativity really is, the sky's the limit. You could make as many tweaks or as little tweaks as you like. And it's super important for us to get this accuracy part right. We paid a lot of attention to it, which is why we train our model actually partnering with material supplier, fabric supplier, to actually get these details accurate. Because if it's not accurate, then it's not a product that you could market or sell, and it's not a tech pack that you could trust. So yeah, from the next point onwards, this part explains how the 1 week actually is feasible. So earlier you saw that every single design is linked to the actual fabric. Now we have built in a vertically integrated supply chain directly into Make the Dot. And other than having the fabric info, we also have the life inventory of these fabric. So as soon as the design was finalized, we actually know exactly how long it will take to manufacture it. And this is very important because then now we're compressing what used to be 6 months for a brand to design and 6 months of production. Now we've compressed it to more or less 4 weeks. Let's say if you want to do a full run of production of 100 pieces of this pair of jeans, it takes about 4 weeks. when you compress a timeline like that, you could completely redefine what a bet is. Earlier, I mentioned that brands normally have to take these huge, expensive bets and produce a ton of garment in one go. But now, if we're shrinking the timeline like that, then we're getting closer and closer to on-demand design and manufacturing. And we could really, truly test what consumers want. Because before you even make that physical sample, you could easily test these online. To Yusen's points earlier from the panel, you could put these on Instagram, you could put these on the website to gauge, hey, did anyone like the design? Like, if you put out an ad, you could see if people resonate with it before you even commit to 100,000 or 10,000 pieces. And so here's the reminder that I would like for you to kind of take away with you today. The path to less waste, I believe, runs through more creativity, not less. And the very same capability that allows you to avoid overproduction is the one that lets you take more creative risk going forward. And what I love about this whole process is that it could scale up and it could scale down. Let's say if you're a really large brand and retailer, you could think of this as newness as a service, on-demand drops, without committing to 12 months production. And on the flip side, if some of you in the audience, if you guys are independent designers or smaller brands, it works equally just as well. You could imagine that this is like having a full team behind you, giving you time back to be creative. And what normally stands in your way of minimum order quantity with a supplier, well, that's gone now. So you don't have to necessarily make the choice between being creative or making a viable product. Last but not least, it brings me to the end of my presentation. And here, what I want to bring to you guys is this pair of jeans. It took us a week to make as a test, as a hypothesis. It didn't bankrupt our company. We didn't need to bet our whole company on it. It's what I chose to make. The platform itself is agnostic. You could really design and make anything. So the question is, what would you guys make with it? Thank you.